Welcome back, guys, to another tutorial. This is the fourth and final video in our series of watercolor Christmas Arctic animals. Today we're painting a reindeer wearing a jingle bell. To get started, you'll want to gather your supplies. I'm using my Fabriano Artistico 140-pound hot-pressed watercolor paper. It is on a block, which means all the sides are glued down except for one little corner, which allows you to remove each sheet of paper. I have my turquoise blue, Daniel Smith Indigo, Daniel Smith Transparent Brown Oxide, Holbein Scarlet Lake, and Winsor & Newton Transparent Orange. And over in this corner, I have Daniel Smith Moonglow. I have my two silver black velvet brushes, size 4 and size 8 round brushes. And for the snow at the very end, we'll be using Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. My reference photo is from Unsplash, and you can see that the reindeer is absolutely adorable, but his antlers are a little bit uneven. So to correct that, I actually grabbed another image from Google and superimposed those antlers on top of my original reindeer. So here's the Photoshop version. To do the sketch, I start with a really rough outline, just creating the envelope shape of the animal, sketching so lightly so that I can erase my marks and darken them up as I get more confident with my drawing. You can see the negative space between the legs is quite small. I'm looking at the distance from the hind legs to the front legs. They're very close together because a reindeer is somewhat foreshortened. And then I'm just drawing the head and the body. I try to compare one shape to the other just so that I get the sizing correct. For the antlers, I just draw one little stem for each antler at first. And then once I'm confident with my placement and overall location of everything, I go back in and draw with much darker lines. Here I can add the little hooves and the separation of those cloven hooves and be a little bit more specific about the shapes of the knobby knees and even add some hair texture. I'm darkening up around the neck and adding the little face details. I'm making it a little more smiley than in the reference photo. This is a Christmas card after all, so we want it to look really pleasant and somewhat illustrative. It is important to include those distinctive markings of a reindeer, and if you want to make it extra festive, go ahead and add a ribbon around the neck with a jingle bell. I just drew this out of imagination, or you can Google it, of course. You can find anything on Google. And then for the eye, I'm just simplifying it a little bit and adding some eyelashes and those comma-shaped nostrils, and then drawing the dark details around the face. Most of this will be done with paint, but it is helpful to have all these markings just to help you guide your decisions when you go in with paint. And then for the antlers, I'm making them quite a bit longer than in the reference photo, embellishing on them a little bit. Since reindeers are already somewhat mythical creatures in the Christmas world, you can make those antlers look however you want. Once you're happy with your sketch, we can begin painting. I'm starting by taking clean water and wetting the background, and then I'm going to grab some Daniel Smith Moonglow, swirl it around in my palette first to test out the value, and then I'm adding a horizon line just beneath the belly of our reindeer. I want this background to have mountainous shapes, just like we see in the reference photo, but of course a little bit brushy. We want it to look really painterly. Underneath the reindeer, I'm adding a dark shadow. You can even add little brush strokes to indicate maybe some footprints in the snow. And then I'm using some really watery moonglow in the background itself, extending that all around the negative space in between the legs and up around the antlers as well. If you want the antlers to be somewhat of a golden color or lighter than your background, paint around those. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just avoiding the antlers and painting around them. All right, once you're happy with your background, if it's still damp, you can take this opportunity to add little blooms. So just dip your brush in clean water and gently dab it on the paper. It's important that your paper is not too wet for this technique to work, but it needs to be reaching just that stage where it's starting to begin to dry, but is still glossy. Now we can start on the legs of our reindeer. These I'm pretty much just painting in black, just like you see in the reference photo. I'm using my Daniel Smith Indigo, which is almost black in its purest form. This is probably the easiest portion of this painting. You're just coloring in those legs. Once you've got the sketch, it's just like filling in a coloring book pretty much. For the hooves, you can use a lighter wash of your indigo, and so it'll look like a nice light gray on those hooves. Leave little highlights if you wish so that it looks a little more detailed, and then paint around some of that overlapping shaggy fur that's coming over the legs. If you want to switch to a smaller brush, that's probably a good idea. I just stuck with my size 8 round brush for this. And with the background dry, I can add an extra mountain in the background here using my Daniel Smith Moonglow. I actually mixed in a little bit of indigo in this color so that it stands out a little more. Now for the reindeer's body, I'm starting with wet and wet, so I'm using clean water and painting that all inside of my pencil lines. Then I'm taking some of my Daniel Smith transparent brown oxide and using that as the main color for the body of the reindeer, starting at the top and gently swirling the paint downward. You'll notice that as you spread the paint around, it begins to thin out a little bit and get lighter in value, and you can use this to your advantage. In areas of the painting where you want your values to be lighter, use less paint on your brush, and of course where you want it to be darker, dig directly into your palette and grab pure rich color. Here I've mixed in a little of the Scarlet Lake for a more reddish tone on the back of the reindeer, and then as the paint wears off my brush, I can pull it downward into the areas that are more in light. I'm introducing some of that transparent orange into the mix here since I didn't have yellow on my palette. This is a good substitute. And then on the belly, I'm using indigo to paint some of that gray tone in the belly. Now, if this video is moving too fast for you, good news, it is available in real time. Just head over to emilyolsonart.com where you can become a member of my Watercolor Mastery online school. With your membership, you'll have access to over 115 real-time tutorials fully narrated, and each tutorial comes with a reference photo and a traceable line drawing, as well as a complete list of supplies used in each video. I'll leave a link in the description below so you guys can check that out. All right, I'm now grabbing some more transparent brown oxide and a little of my orange, more richly pigmented on my brush, and painting some of the fur details. We have this beautiful shaggy fur on the reindeer that's coming and overlapping the legs, so I'm painting that on, and then with a lighter wash beginning to paint the face. Once you've painted the brown details inside of the ears and just next to the muzzle, be brave here and grab your richest, darkest black. Here I've mixed indigo and transparent brown oxide, and I'm painting the center of the face completely dark, painting all the dark details on the ears and in the muzzle, a little bit lighter around the antlers. Anywhere you see the values shifting, just remove a little of your paint and adjust accordingly. I'm accentuating that smile and adding a darling little eye and some details like an eyebrow and an extra eyelash, which I don't necessarily see in the reference photo, but I want it to be extra cute. And then to help that blend, I'm adding some brown, removing some paint, swiping along that edge with a lighter value, removing some more paint, drawing on my paper towel, and then swiping on that edge one more time. This is how you can transition from dark to light seamlessly and smoothly. I'm using a little bit of gray on the nose and touching up the legs with another layer of black and adding a few more textural details of fur around the legs and on the belly. And then for the antlers, I'm using a watered down brown, painting a first layer. Doesn't have to be perfect. Try to stay in your lines as best as you can, but if not, that's okay. And then for our Christmas effect here, I'm taking my brilliant Scarlet Lake, painting the ribbon, and actually painting a little highlight in the center. And you can do this the same way you did in the face, where you're transitioning from dark to light by gradually removing paint and then introducing it back in and getting darker on the other side of the shine on the ribbon. Once you're happy with your ribbon, you can paint the jingle bell. For this, I'm using my transparent orange and a darker layer of that on the shadow side of the bell, and then a little bit of indigo for the bell itself. And now I'm adding a shadow using dark transparent brown oxide on the right side of each antler. This is really going to help those antlers stand out against the background. If you want it to look amazing and realistic, don't be afraid to go dark in these areas. Add any touch-ups that you wish. And once you're happy with your reindeer, if you want, you can add another layer of mountains to the background just for an extra dimension. I thought it just needed one more layer. And then for our final detail, we're adding our Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White using a small brush and gently dabbing on little snowflakes in the background. Now, to make it all feel merged and like one complete piece, be sure to put some of the snow in front of the animal and paint it over the dark areas so that we feel like the reindeer is immersed in the snowstorm and we have a sense of space and depth. So there's our finished reindeer painting. I hope you guys enjoyed this holiday series of Christmas card polar animals. I sure enjoyed creating it for you guys. Let me know in the comments what you think. Hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you in the next video.